Well, now it's time for us to take a look at Ether Channel here in the Advanced Technologies class on demand. With Ether Channel, we're going to examine how we can take multiple links and bundle them together and dynamically load balance across them. You see, Ether Channel is related to Spanning Tree Protocol, as we'll discover later on in the Advanced Technologies class. But anyways, we're going to be able to take multiple links, as I said, bundle them together, and treat them like one logical link, thanks to this exciting technology. With Ether Channel, we're going to get the aggregate bandwidth of these multiple links. We're going to take multiple pipes, if you will, and create one big pipe. The load balancing may default to something like MAC address or IP address based, and that's great. The great news is we have flexibility on how we are going to configure the load balancing on many Catalyst switches today. So notice it's a tremendously powerful and tremendously flexible technology. We can create Ether channels out of Layer 2 access ports, trunk ports, tunnel ports. We can do this with native Layer 3 interfaces. We'll go ahead and demonstrate the creation of both a Layer 2 and a Layer 3 Ether channel in this particular segment. It all comes down to a magic command, as we'll see, the channel group command, in order to configure our Ether channels. Just like we had the dynamic trunk protocol when it came to our trunk links and easing our administration of creating them, we have something to ease our administration of creating Ether channels. There's a standard negotiation protocol, and then there's a non-standard or Cisco proprietary protocol. The Cisco proprietary protocol is called the Port Aggregation Protocol, or PAGP. The open standard is the Link Aggregation Control Protocol, or LACP. We can think of the differences between these as much like ISL versus 802.1q, an open standard versus a non-open standard method. With PAGP, we have the modes of desirable and auto. With LACP, we have the modes of active and passive. And we'll go ahead and demonstrate both in this sequence of videos. By the way, if you don't want to use these dynamic protocols, we can go ahead and just use the mode of on, which signals we don't want to use any dynamic negotiation in the formation of our Ether channels. Notice that depending on how you configure the links, you may or may not get an Ether channel forming. Obviously, an on-on relationship is a completely static Ether channel configuration, and we have the formation of the Ether channel. Desirable, well, that'll work. Each side wants to do it, and each side wants to use the port aggregation protocol. Desirable and auto, that'll work, again, using port aggregation protocol. Active will work. That will be a LACP configuration in which each side is initiating the Ether channel, and then finally active-passive would work. We're using LACP on both sides, and one side is initiating it, the other side is just passively accepting it. Let's go ahead and start out with the configuration of the easiest Ether channel, and that's the Layer 2. The Layer 2 Ether channel config is going to be pretty straightforward. Remember, we discovered that we have a couple of links between switch 1 and switch 2. Here on switch 1, if I do a show interface trunk, we remember that we had Fast Ethernet 13. And in an earlier demonstration, I went ahead and created a trunk link out of that interface. Well, there's actually 3 links between switch 1 and switch 2. There's FA13, FA14, and FA15. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to say interface range FA0/13 to 15. So we are going to go ahead and configure that range of interfaces that connect switch 1 to switch 2. I'm going to go ahead now and issue the shutdown command. When you're manipulating ether channels, you can get mismatches of the ether channeling protocol, and you can get into all kinds of problems. So let's not be lazy, and let's not break our network. Let's make sure we shut down these interfaces before we engage in this configuration. Okay, so on switch 1, I'm going to say, not configure terminal. That wouldn't make any sense. On switch 1, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that all of the physical interfaces are identical in their configuration. You see, ether channel's picky about that. It wants the physical interfaces to be like twins that we are using in order to, bundle them together. It only makes sense that they should be identical in their config. So let me say switch port trunk encapsulation .1q, and let me say switch port mode trunk. So we're going to make sure they're all .1q trunks, they're all in the mode of trunk, and then when we ensure they're twins, we can go ahead and say channel group, and you use a locally significant channel group number. It only has local significance. I'll go ahead and say 1, and then we're going to say mode, and we're going to pick one of those modes that we discussed earlier. Let's go ahead and do the standards-based LACP here initially, and I'll say the mode, therefore, will be active. Notice it automatically creates what's called a port channel for us, called port channel 1. This is the logical structure that holds these physical interfaces and enables them for this ether channel behavior. We'll see this again when we look at spanning tree protocol in conjunction with this technology a little later on. So channel 1 mode active, channel group 1 mode active over here on switch 1 should get the job done. Now, before I enable anything, let me go to the other side and make sure we have a congruent configuration over there. I'm going to go to switch 2. I'm going to say interface range fast Ethernet 0/13 to fast Ethernet 0/15. I am then going to indicate that I want to, you know what, just 1 second here. I'm going to pause the video. We're going to pick right up right here. Just have a background distraction, but we'll pick up right from this point. Okay, now that I've taken care of the barking dog, oh, that sounded harsh. I don't want to upset anyone from the PETA group. There was no dogs harmed in the making of this video. All right, anyways, I just couldn't even think straight with the background noise there for a moment. All right, anyways, so here we are. Interface range fast Ethernet 0/13 through 15. And I want to make, really a mirror of our other configuration. I'm going to say switch port trunk encap.1q, and I'm using abbreviations here because you're already familiar with these commands, I would hope. Switch port mode trunk, and then I'm going to say channel group. It doesn't have to match the other side. I'm just going to use a locally significant one. Mode, and let's do passive. We did active on the other side. We'll do passive on this side, and that should still cause a trunk to form. We'll go ahead and end our configuration over here. We'll go back over to switch 1, where we're still in interface range configuration mode, and we'll go ahead and issue a no-shut. All right, we're going to see the magic happen here at the command line. Okay, 13, 14, and 15 come up. All right, then the line protocol comes up, and then the port channel comes up, and the line protocol on the port channel comes up. And we are in excellent shape here. If I do a show interface trunk, for example, we now see that the port channel, which consists of 13, 14, and 15 physical interfaces, it is now in the on mode. It is forming the 802.1q trunk. I love it. Sure, there are commands like show ether channel, like show ether channel summary And sure, this is a great command and it shows you what members are participating in this bundle and all of that great stuff. But one of the points that I want to make here is notice how we didn't really have to engage in that command. Just by knowing what to expect and configuring our config in the proper manner at the configuration prompt, we know everything worked out great. Again, show ether channel summary is splendid, but we really didn't need it there, did we? We saw that we got the confirmation we needed just at the command line. This is something to keep in mind for the CCIE lab exam. You want to make sure that you are verifying only when necessary. I mean, sometimes what the command prompt tells you, what the syslog, what the console messages, I should call them, what those console messages tell you, oftentimes that's all the verification you're going to need for a particular step. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Anthony, Mr. Smart CCIE, that was easy. That was a joke. Let's see something a bit more difficult. All right, let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's take a look at the creation of a layer 3 ether channel. Folks, it's a little more complicated, but no big deal at all. What we're going to see is we're going to go to the physical interfaces and we're going to make them router ports with the no switch port command that you're familiar with. And then we are going to have to go and put, the logical options like the IP address under the port channel interface. So few more steps, but I think you're going to enjoy the layer 3 ether channel configuration. If you look at your Internetwork Expert topology diagram for this class, you notice that we have sketched out here a layer 3 ether channel between switch 4 and switch 2. We're going to bundle 16 and 17 together on switch 4 and 19 and 20 together on switch 2. We will use the addressing shown in the diagram here, and hopefully, if all goes correct, we will have our layer 3 ether channel. Well, here we are back at the command prompt. Let's go over to switch 4 first. We're going to go into global configuration mode. And remember, let's get things shut down. I'm going to say interface range fast Ethernet 0/16 through 17. And I'm going to say shut. We don't want to build any errors into our topology here. All right, we're under the physical interfaces now. In fact, here's how I like to do this. I like to do it where it makes logical sense. I'm going to exit out of that interface range config mode, and I'm going to say interface port channel number 1. In fact, I don't know. I don't want to create any conflicts on my numbering, and we just did a demonstration that had port channel 1, so I'll actually wisely pick port channel 2 here. And then I'll see what else is there to do. Nothing. Just give it a name. And now we're in the port channels interface configuration mode. We say no switch port, and then we say IP address, and this one needs to be 155.15.108.10. Okay, great. We have now gone to the port channel, said you're a layer 3 router port, here is your IP address. Now it makes sense for me to go to the physical interfaces. I'm going to say no switch port. I'm going to say channel group 2 mode, and we'll do PAGP this time, desirable. And there you have it. Now we get to do this again over on the other device. Nice review, right? We'll go over to switch 2. We will say, think of it logically, interface port channel 2, no switch port, IP address 155.15.108.8. We will say interface range, fast Ethernet 0/19 to 20 over on this side. We'll say no switch port, and then channel group 2, mode, and I'll go ahead and say mode, we said desirable, on the other side we'll do mode auto, the other PAG-P mode here. Okay, now all that's left for us to do is go over to switch 4, go into those interfaces, interface range FA 0/16 to 17, and no shut. And again, we just watch what happens at the command line. Okay, 16 and 17 came up, then they went down, then they came back up again. Wow, lots going on here. And now some verifications. How about show IP interface brief, for example? Look at this. Port channel 2 has the IP address 155.15.108.10, and it is in the up state. Wow, that looks really powerful. And again, notice we don't have any need for any fancy, sophisticated show ether channel commands. In fact, the ultimate verification here is going to be to ping the neighbor. And that ping should succeed over that layer 3 ether channel. And, whew, that scared me. It's failing. And it's failing because I've got the wrong IP address. It's 155.15.108.8. And there we go. Whew. I just wiped my brow of the sweat that had appeared there. I like to have problems on the equipment, but only when I expect to have problems, right? Well, I hope you enjoyed this creation of our layer 3 ether channel. And in that example, we used none other than the port aggregation protocol to help us. Well, I hope I didn't give the show ether channel summary too much of a hard time in my demonstration. It obviously is a wonderful command, but I did want to emphasize how we can easily verify our ether channel's creation just from the console messaging that appears. Later on in lessons, we'll see how these ether channels are going to rear their head with things like show spanning tree and show IP route, so you're really going to enjoy that as well. Well, folks, that concludes this particular lesson of our Advanced Technologies class on demand, where we looked at ether channel.